for week 2 of the Sandhill Sling sew along. Oh, I got to make sure I set my chat so I can see live chat, all invisible messages. Welcome. I hope everyone was able to watch the video last week. I know that people are still waiting for some of their kit pieces. That's cool. All of these are available afterwards, and we'll just go from there. This week, you don't need any of the hardware pieces. We're putting together our lining, and it's as simple as that. So I'm going to dive right in. We're starting on step 5, which is the interior pocket. All my little pieces of paper. I'm going to push this down here so you can see what I'm working with, and I am going to turn my little iron on. So you need, and that's my phone case because the phone is too heavy for the thing. You need 2 pieces for the interior pocket, and we're going to sew them together along that top line. I have gray thread in here, and I'm just going to leave it right now because it's not quite the right color, but that's okay. Anyways, this was my piece that I wanted centered. I've just got a piece of muslin to be my lining because it's cheap and plentiful. There is an option to put an elastic casing in the top of this, and I'll talk about it a little bit, but I'm not going to do it because the reading I did said that it tended to pull the back forward. I'll move you over to my machine here. And that it made the back sort of distort. So I'm not going to sew that elastic. So we're sewing with our 1/2 inch seam allowance. I put my scissors here somewhere. There we go. And then we're going to top stitch. If you're going to put the elastic in, what you're going to do is you're going to top stitch at 1/2 inch, and that will make your casing. In order to get a nice fold, I like to open up my seam, iron it, and then I can fold along that line that I've sewn. So they were wrong sides together, and now we're going to turn them, or sorry, they were right sides together, and now we're going to turn them wrong sides together. And you see I can get a nice line there. So yeah, if you're going to put the casing in, you sew at 1/2 inch. I'm going to sew at 1/4 inch because I'm not putting that casing in. And you can sew additional lines of stitching to help strengthen this part, but it's not entirely necessary. Back here again. Trim all my tails. The gray doesn't look horrible. Doesn't look great. I probably should have changed my thread, but too late now. C'est la vie. Okay, and then we're going to take one of our back pieces, and we're going to line up the pocket, the main back panel from the and my piece should be like this, from the lining. So we're going to just line our pocket up on here, and we are not going to skip basting this because when you put the gusset onto this, you don't want it to shift around. So I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to baste at 1/4 inch again. I don't know if you folks can hear, my son was just stomping outside the door because of course he was. It's lovely being a parent. So lovely. Yep, that's right. Okay, and same here. Oh, and the next step, I failed to grab my eldest's teeny tiny cutting mat to be able to do this. We need to round off all of those corners again of both your front and back panel. You can stack them and do them at the same time. So I'm just going to do it on my cutting mat, which is over in that direction. Momentarily. Sorry, folks. So it's the same the way we did it last week with the exterior. With the back. And when we get to working with the front, we'll be doing this same step again. This is its own whole step. I feel like it's not a huge deal to do this, which is why doing it separately as we're sewing things, like it doesn't all need to be done at the same time. That's, I think, what I'm trying to get across here. There we go. So, sorry about that. Corners rounded all through there. So we are going to jump ahead now to step number 8, which is assembling. So we're just going to put these pieces to the side for now. We're going to be assembling the gusset lining. I'm just going to move you back over here for a second. So what we're going to do with the top, the lining, sorry, we're assembling the lining gusset. Yes, that's what I said. These are the top pieces. You're going to fold over 2 edges 1/2 inch. So I've done one already. I'm going to do the second. I'm going to do it like this, so maybe I don't lose so much of that little dolphin there. And just iron this into place. These little itty bitty rulers are perfect for this kind of step to measure, or you can use a seam gauge or go through and, you know, mark it. I'm just, move the iron out of the way. I'm just doing that like that. Okay. So now you've got your 2 pieces like so, with the folded edges facing each other. And what we're going to do is take your bottom gusset piece from your lining, and we're going to sew right sides together the short ends. And there is going to be potentially a small gap there. That's not worrisome at all. And we're going to do both sides. You can pin it all in one go if you're comfortable with that. The top gusset is shorter than the bottom gusset, so when you pin it, it's going to pull a little bit from that bottom, but not like pull it off. It's just going to sit. You can see the way it's sitting here. And I need to remember to decrease my stitch length back down to 2.2. And then after this, we're putting the lining together. Like it's just that simple. And then we're done this week. So, okay, so let's put this through. Trim up my tails. I'm trying to get really good about that because otherwise my floor ends up full of little bits of fabric. Here we go. Now, the other nice thing about doing this is that putting your interior, your lining, and I lost a clip, and your exterior together it's the same method. So doing the interior this way, it's a little easier to work with. It's less heavy, and it gets you to understanding that method. So the first thing we're going to do, and what we're following right now, this is actually step number 10. But step 10 follows step 9, C through F. You're going to need a marking pencil. And what we're going to do with both the front and the back is we're going to fold it in half, and we're going to mark the halfway points on all of these. And I'm going to turn my iron off. You don't need your iron anymore at this point. So and of course that doesn't want to work. Let's see if this one will work. I think it doesn't like this board. I think that's the issue. It wants something stiffer. And then do the same thing vertically. There you go. I knew you worked once upon a time. It's a good idea to always have multiple colors of marking pencils because the blue is not going to show up on this little black spot here. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again with this one. And then we're going to repeat this process with our gusset. And what that's going to allow us to do is line up the halfway points between the front and the back with the gusset. That one works significantly better. And we want to align the side seams. And yes, you only need marks on the outside here. Am I missing chat from anybody? Is anybody asking questions? Nope, no one's asking questions. Ask your questions if you need to. I will answer them as best as possible. And I guess if you're having trouble if you're having trouble seeing your markings, or you can always like actually iron them so you get a better visual. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take those halfway markings and line those up, and that's going to give us the halfway point on the rest of this gusset. And the reason that you do it that way is because the side seam is not the halfway point. As we said, the piece is the top gusset is shorter than the bottom gusset. And I lost my marks there. And I guess the other thing, tell me if I'm going too fast, because I tend to work quickly, and that's not always good for everybody. Okay, so this part is one of the tricky parts, because we're going to be sewing around this curve, and there's a couple of things that will help make this easier. The first is we're going to clip into our corners. Maybe you can see it better down here. We're going to clip diagonally by about 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch. And what that's going to do is going to allow us to ease the lining into here. I'm also going to suggest that you don't overpin. You want to make sure that you're pinning this lining enough. But if you overpin, you're not going to be able to stretch it, because you do actually have to stretch around everything. We want to make sure that the top, which is that 2 piece, is at the top. We're going to line up our markings. I'm going to grab a handful of clips here. My second one is here. My third one is here. Ooh, I probably should have basted the bottom together too. That's okay. We'll see how this goes. And then the fourth one is there. And I like to, I'm going to put my seam allowance facing the bottom, and I'm going to put an additional clip there, and probably one more sort of here. And you can see how this is like bagged out sort of. So in order to get this to like ease into everything, we're going to have to clip this. So I'm going to do that right now. Just little tiny cuts. 3 to 4 is all you need, just around that curve. Put an additional clip down here. So again, you can see, hope you can see, 3 to 4 tiny cuts. And I'm a big proponent of being able to adjust as you're sewing. You know, tension, how fast you're sewing, it all plays into, this does not want to clip for me. There we go. It all plays into, you know, whether you're stretching the fabric or not, it all plays into how this is going to fit together. So being able to adjust on the fly as you're sewing is important, and not something that should be, a skill that should not be disregarded. Anyways, coming over here now, I'm going to move this out of the way so everyone can hopefully see well. I'm going to start along one of the sides just because it's nice and flat and easy to work with. And we're sewing with that 1/2 inch seam, and I'm going to make sure that my seam, the seam from the gusset, is pointing down. And this might be a spot where you realize, I'm going to clip into this gusset a little bit too, where you realize that your seam allowance is not going to be cleanly 1/2 inch, and that's okay too. I wish I could like get this closer so you folks could see. Let me know if you're having trouble seeing what I'm doing with easing this in, and I'll see if I can make it work better. And you can see, for all that I so fast, I'm going slowly through this part because I want to make sure. I'm going to put, you want it to lie as flat as possible. And what, by clipping into that seam allowance, what it's allowing the fabric to do is to spread open more so that you can make it lie more flat. I'm definitely going to suggest clipping into the gusset as well a little bit. The seam allowance on that gets trimmed, so don't worry about it looking funky with the little cuts into it. And you do have to pull a fair bit and like wiggle the fabric around and like this. I'll show you afterwards. It's my seam allowance is not perfectly 1/2 inch through this at all. It just reminder to make sure that you put your needle in the down position when you're stopping. It's going to help keep your project from shifting. There we go, we made it. So you can see, like, you can see what it looks like, especially up here. Like, that's not perfectly, that's not a 1/2 inch seam allowance there. There's more, there's less of the gusset, especially there. There's another spot where you can see it. And it's not the end of the world. So that's half of that. So you have to do the same thing now with the other side, with the back side. And once you've done that, your your lining is together. I'm going to recommend holding off trimming this week. We'll do that afterwards. Let me know right now if you want to watch me do this again, or if everybody's confident with me with doing the second step. I'm going to start pinning it, but you can see what's going on here. But it's the same. You basically do it twice. So let me know right now. And if, because that way this will keep this video a little bit shorter as well, which is probably better for rewatching. And I've lost the mark. And if you, I guess that's another thing. If you lose one of your marks, you just have to fold the piece. Do it again. Okay, I'll do it again. It is honestly, this is what, so this is why this bag is an intermediate bag or someone with a lot of patience. It is a little bit fussy. Go slowly. And if you really feel the need, don't be afraid. If you get it and it's like, oh my God, this looks horrible, seam rip it. Like there's nothing, as frustrating as it is to seam rip your project, sometimes that's just what you have to do. And we shouldn't be upset by the fact that we didn't get it perfect the first time. Sometimes it's in order for it to, you know, be perfect later down the line. That's what you need. Make sure that this seam here, where you've attached your top gusset and your bottom gusset, is pointing in the same direction, pointing down. And same on this side. But honestly, the being able to not overpin it helps you. If you if I'll show you here, if I overpin it, this is not going to ease where I need it to. Like, you always have tips and things. Yes, that's why we do these. You can see I really I'm actually having to woven fabrics do have some stretch to them, and in order for me to get this around here, I'm actually having to stretch the fabric into place. Yeah, I'm gonna stop pinning that because it's going to be a pain in the butt. I'll sew this again for everybody. So we're back over here. And I would suggest sewing with your gusset on top. The smaller piece allows you to, oh, I forgot to do my clipping. I'm going to clip first. Sewing with your gusset on top allows you to shift that smaller piece a little bit more easily, as opposed to sewing with the back piece, and to really see if you've missed sewing it in any place. So I would recommend that as opposed to sewing with the main lining on top. So not sewing it like this, sewing it like this. As I clip this here. Do. You do have to do this again when you do the exterior. So don't sew it. You can see my back piece is, don't sew it like this. Flip it so that your gusset is on top and sew it like that. Okay. So I'm using my, I'm using my fingers further, where the needle is right now is just at the seam line of where the gussets are joined, the bottom and the top gusset. And I'm using my fingers to hold these the curved piece together later down the line, because that gives me a little bit of tension on top of the gusset to help with easing it. And by not pinning it, by using my fingers to hold it in place, what it's allowing me to do is to make those micro adjustments so that it lies flat. And I'm going to also, one must make sound effects when sewing, or it's not effective at all. As long as you're clipping within the seam allowance, you're fine. Okay. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that this part is a little finicky. And you definitely want to go slowly. On the last corner here. And that's it. So yes, what you're supposed to do next is to trim the seam allowance down. This is the top of the bag, except around from the top gusset, because this part is going to get sewn to the seam allowance of the exterior. So you would trim this this bottom gusset seam allowance down. I'm going to say hold off on doing that right now. We'll take a look at that when we actually get to the point of putting the bag together. And you're going to want to leave your lining turned inside out right now, because it's going to just drop in. But yeah, there it is. I got my pocket. I got my dolphins in there. And at this point, there, I'm going to do this and hope to goodness that this stays. We're ready for next week. So next week is the zipper installation, which is way easier than you would have imagined. If anybody has any questions, just pop them in the chat or you can make a comment. I'd love for folks to give us. No, absolutely. And my no problem about the second. Sorry, I'm like sewing and not seeing all the comments all the time. If everybody could give this video a thumbs up, it will help us with our algorithm and reaching more people. That would be super awesome. I shall see everybody next Monday back here. Have a great night, folks.